Hey guys, I'm Tom the Tech Chap, and this is the new 2020 iPad Pro. I've got the top spec 12.9-inch version here with all the bells and whistles. So this year is actually the 10th anniversary of the iPad, and this is the 4th generation of the Pro model. And while there are a couple of nice little upgrades here, and it goes without saying this is the best iPad yet, it still feels just a little bit underwhelming. Don't get me wrong, this is absolutely the best tablet in the world, if you can afford it. And quite frankly, iPads have dominated the tablet market for the past 10 years. But there's just not a whole lot new here, or at least not that you and I would notice in everyday use. So these are the headlines. We get a slightly faster A12Z processor, 6 gigs of RAM, previously only the 1TB iPad Pro had 6, the rest had 4 gigs, double the storage on the base model, a new ultra-wide camera lens, a LiDAR sensor for more accurate augmented reality. We now get 5 high-quality microphones built in, plus the latest Wi-Fi 6 and the LTE model supports more bands than before. But there's still no 5G here, unfortunately. And that's pretty much it. Same design, bar the camera module, same 120Hz LCD screen, same battery, same accessories, same experience really. I mean, the best bit is the fact that we do now get 128 gigs on the entry-level model, up from 64, and it means most of us can go for the cheapest one without worrying about running out of space. Now you can get this in any color you like, as long as it's light or dark gray. Well, silver or space gray. A few other options would have been nice, but it's still a great looking tablet. It's just 5.9mm thick, and for its size, it's incredibly lightweight. And while some people aren't a huge fan of this sort of industrial aesthetic, I quite like it. The bezels are as thin as I think you could get on a tablet while still being able to hold it. And for unlocking, we have the same fantastic face unlock using the front camera and IR sensor. I was kind of hoping that we'd see Apple introduce their rumored upcoming micro LED screens on this, or at least jump to OLED, because while the LCD screen on this does look really good, with the smooth 120Hz ProMotion, great viewing angles, wide color gamut, 600 nit peak brightness, it really is a beautiful screen, but it still can't match the contrast or the super deep blacks of your phone's AMOLED or OLED screen. So watching a Netflix movie in a dark scene or looking at the black bars, they can look more gray than black. My understanding from Apple is that having a 120Hz screen with OLED at this size is just too difficult to manufacture, or at least too expensive. Also, it still doesn't technically support HDR either. Apple says the screen would need to be at least 1000 nits for them to call it HDR, although it can stream HDR10 and Dolby Vision video to your compatible TV. So that's fine, but we are seeing most 2020 high-end phones offer a high refresh rate, an OLED screen, and full HDR support. Granted, they aren't as big as this, but it would have been nice to have. So I think the most exciting iPad news is the upcoming Magic Keyboard, with a proper trackpad, USB-C pass-through charging, and a really cool magnetic design. Unfortunately, it's not out until May, so I don't have one to test yet, and it'll set you back either $299 or $349 depending on which size of iPad you have. That's a lot of money. In the meantime, to give you an idea of how it would work, I've hooked up my Magic Mouse too, and you can see the little round cursor icon you get. It feels pretty intuitive actually, and there's a kind of auto-aim that helps you lock onto icons. It feels a bit like the Apple TV interface. Now, using a mouse and keyboard on an iPad still feels a bit weird, but Apple really are closing the gap between tablet and laptop. Although this is still definitely tablet first, unlike say the Microsoft Surface Pro 7 or their fancy new Pro X, which are solid laptops, but Windows 10 on a tablet is still a bit rubbish. Still, I am excited to try the Magic Keyboard, and I will make a whole new video about that, testing it with this when it comes out in May, so stay tuned. But the thing is, it's not actually exclusive to the new 2020 iPad, it'll work with any iPad Pro. So if you already own one of the last 3 generations of Pro, then it's not really a reason to upgrade. Question for you guys though, since Apple just launched the new MacBook Air at the same time as this, and actually for similar money, would you want to see a versus video between the two? Give me a thumbs up below if you would, and I'll try and make that next week. So as you know, the iPad Pro comes in 2 sizes, 11 and 12.9 inches, which is the one I have here. Although I wish they'd just call it the 13 to keep things simple. Now I also have last year's 11-inch model. Side by side, which size would you go for? I must admit I kind of prefer the smaller one. It's more subtle when I'm using it out and about, say to watch movies on a plane or a train. It's just more comfortable to hold, plus it's a good deal cheaper. Now, of course, most normal people don't upgrade their iPads every year. It's probably more like every 3 or 4 years. So it's unlikely if you own last year's one of these that you would upgrade to this. But I wanted to compare the two together to see just how much better the new one is, or if in fact maybe a second-hand 2019 model is the better bet. Well, in terms of performance, in Geekbench 5, the 2020 model is just 0.5% faster in single core and 1.8% faster in multi-core performance. It's a little more promising in terms of graphics with a new 8-core GPU, but we're still just looking at a 7.5% boost. You can kind of see why they're calling this the A12Z rather than the A13X. It's a fairly insignificant upgrade and you're not likely to notice any real-world difference. But you know what? That's okay. This is still ridiculously fast, especially with the 120Hz screen. Jumping between apps, having 2 in split view, playing the most graphically demanding games, it never skips a beat. And to be honest, it's already got far more power than any iOS app needs, and that's kind of what's frustrating. So this is running iPadOS 13.4, and it's closer than ever to feeling more like a laptop, but we are still limited to iOS apps, or tablet versions of desktop programs. And that's fine for most of what I need to do. Google Docs, Office, Lightroom, Social, Spotify, Netflix, YouTube, the odd game or drawing app, you know, the usual stuff. But iMovie and Premiere Rush just don't cut it for me when it comes to video editing. And there's still no Final Cut Pro, Logic, or even a decent Instagram app. However, the fact that you can plug in a storage drive or SD card from your camera, assuming you have a USB-C adapter, is really useful for transferring files and then editing or uploading them. And then paired with a keyboard and maybe the Apple Pencil, it really is a very versatile bit of kit. Now a quick mention of the cameras, because we get a 10 megapixel f1.8 main lens and a new 12 megapixel f2.4 ultra wide, and photos do look good. So here's a little side-by-side shooting at 4K with the rear cameras. I'm not really seeing any difference in quality here. If you look at the light bouncing off the wall from my Philips Hue, you can see there's no real difference in how it handles the highlights. If we look at some of the sort of darker areas, apologies for the mess, it's pretty similar actually. Yeah, I have not made any effort to tidy up for this video, but well, it's more realistic. But what you can then do is switch to the ultra-wide camera, which obviously you can't on last year's model, so there's a lot more in the frame, although the quality's not quite as good. But if you are someone who uses their iPad for the camera, no judgments, then this may be a decent upgrade and a good reason to go for the new one. So in this crazy world at the moment, I think FaceTiming, video calling is going to be more important than ever. I just wanted to give you a bit of an idea side by side of how they compare. Now, one of the most talked about new features is LiDAR, which stands for light detecting and ranging. It works in basically the same way as a time of flight or TOF sensor that we've seen on a lot of recent smartphones, and it's used to measure depth. To be honest, there isn't really a whole lot of use for it right now. There aren't many optimized apps out there, so I will test this again in a few months, but right now the best sort of way of showing it off is with Apple's own Measure app, which now, unlike previous iPads, doesn't need to be moved around for calibration. It works straight away. It's also more accurate, it can handle more complicated surfaces, and you can zoom in to get more precise measurements. It will be interesting to see what developers can do with this, but as I say, right now, it's more of a tech demo than a must-have feature. As for battery life, it's exactly the same as before, but you know what? That's fine. I have zero complaints. Apple claim that you'll get 10 hours of video watching from this on Wi-Fi and 9 using LTE, and that's pretty much bang on what you get. This is, out of all the products that I carry around, you know, phone, laptop, tablet, honestly, I never worry about the battery on this thing. Granted, I don't use it as much as my laptop or phone, but I've never had a problem with this. Now, charging speed, using the bundled 18-watt charger, it takes about 1 hour and 40, but you can always buy Apple's optional 30-watt fast charger, or if you have a higher power MacBook charger, you could use that too for faster charging, but it might degrade the battery a little bit quicker over time. So then, the big question, should you buy the new iPad Pro 2020? Well, if you want the best tablet in the world, then yeah, absolutely. But it's not worth upgrading to if you own one of the previous Pro models. And I think personally, I would go with the cheapest 11-inch model of this, maybe with a smart cover, and then perhaps in a couple of months, look into the Magic Keyboard. However, if I were recommending an iPad to my friends, then I probably wouldn't go with the Pro. I'd suggest the iPad Air because it's a good £300 cheaper. And to be honest, the vast majority of people don't really care about 120 Hz or the super thin bezels or LiDAR or an ultra-wide camera, those sort of things. They just want a good iPad. And while we also have the basic iPad as well as the iPad mini, I think the iPad Air is kind of like the best all-rounder right now. So while there are a few improvements here and there, it's just not that big of an upgrade this year. So I think maybe, given the crazy times we live in at the moment, if you are looking for a new iPad and you want a Pro model, maybe a second-hand 2019 one is the best value option. But what about you? Do you think Apple's done enough here? And if you were to buy this, would you go for the 11 or the 13-inch version? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and if you're not already sick of my face or my voice, then why not hit that subscribe button below, and I'll catch you next time right here on the Tech Chat.